Hello and welcome to Season 4 of Off Track, powered by Rich Energy. As you know by now, I'm your host, Dave Neal, and to kick off the new season, we sit down in a hotel bar in Manchester with Eurosport's Matt Roberts to talk about his career in TV and his venture into becoming an accomplished biographer. It's just under 100 minutes of chat, but could have been so much longer, but it does leave the door open for another chat later in the year. So without further ado, it's over to myself and Matt Roberts in the bar of the Dakota Hotel in Manchester. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to Off Track, powered by Rich Energy. I'm your host, Dave Neal, and this week I'm absolutely delighted to say that from the beautiful confines of the Dakota Hotel in Manchester, you're chuckling already, it was your choice. And the bar bill so far is quite limited, so we're doing all right. Ladies and gentlemen, Eurosport, British Superbike, World Superbike presenter, Matt Roberts. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Dave. Welcome to the Dakota, my humble abode. I only chose this place because I knew you'd be picking up the bar tab, so I thought we'll go somewhere swanky.
And you'd be correct. It's almost like the west wing of your house, isn't it? You must feel at home here.
Yeah, the decor is very familiar.
Excellent. Mate, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here and a pleasure to meet you in such great surroundings. How are you? How's the winter been?
Yeah, I've been wintering well, thanks, Dave. Been good. I was ready for a little break, to be fair, when the season finished, because it had been an intense few months, with so many races packed together, racing almost every weekend, right through to the late part of November, really, with World Superbike. So yeah, I was ready for a little break and catch up with the family, because my eldest two kids are both at school now, so when you're working every weekend and they're at school, you just ships in the night, and that's not good. And so yeah, lovely Christmas, just catching up with them and just being a dad and being at home and doing a little bit of work, a little bit of studying and reading and getting myself ready now. And we were just talking about it's almost time to start the pre-season diet and try and get rid of a few pounds, because the TV is not kind in that respect, and lockdown wasn't good to me, so I'm still trying to get back to 2019.
Lockdown levels. Was last year, man.
Yeah, I know, it's a lockdown hangover.
You and me both, though.
That's my excuse.
And we're sticking to it. We're both sticking to it. It's sitting up straighter. It's breathing in a little bit more. Even as we're sat here now, we're both sat here doing the same sort of thing. And
we just had a pint of beer delivered to us.
And there's a beautiful pint of Moretti as well. So hang on, let's have a cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks.
Cheers. How's that?
Dave. Yeah. Crack on when you're ready.
You've been on Chasing the Race. You were on the podcast during lockdown. So the guys who are listening in can listen to your early stage of your career through that one, because before they all went off on a tangent, as Chrissy and Dom tend to do, that side was covered quite well. But the side I wanted to start off from is where you stepped into pit lane reporting and made the jump from writing to be in front of the camera. How big a step was that for you, from being at Dorna, doing the writing side, to then all of a sudden being alongside Nick Harris, the actual legend of Grand Prix commentating?
Yeah.
How was that for you? What did you feel like for that as your first step into that side of racing?
It was a fairly natural progression, I would say, although unexpected at the time, and it wasn't something that I was particularly planning for or working towards. But actually, when I think back, I did have an interest in TV. I don't think I mentioned this to Chrissy and Dom on their podcast, but and I almost forget it even ever happened. But when I first, even before I graduated from uni, I applied to be on a reality TV show, a travel show, called E-Trippers. And you can Google it, but there's not a lot online, I promise you. It's all on VHS at my mum's house in the loft. But it was for a cable TV channel called Rapture TV. You're of a similar vintage to me, Dave, so you might remember they used to do Clubland. They used to produce like Clubland series and stuff that would be on late night on Channel 4, but Rapture had their own channel. Anyway, this travel show was basically they put two people together as a partnership. They sent you to one part of the world with a camcorder, a mobile phone and a laptop, and you had to get to another part of the world. And through the auditions process, they teamed me up with this guy who would eventually be my travel partner. And this guy was a guy called James, and he was a gay guy, and he wanted to go to San Francisco to check out the gay scene and visit the Castro district. And I guess I was kind of cast by the producers as a football-loving northerner. And my ultimate goal was to go to Buenos Aires to watch Boca Juniors play. I'm a big football fan, and Maradona is my hero. And so anyway, they sent us they put the two of us together, and we flew out to San Francisco, and we had 800 quid in 2 months to get from San Francisco to Buenos Aires. And we filmed each other on that journey. We didn't make it on the 800 quid, but we did make it. We had to file for a bit more budget in the end. And the idea, the concept of the show was a bit before its time, probably, because we had to go to internet cafes to upload stuff. We had to send tapes back by DHL from remote parts of the world. And the whole, the world wasn't quite ready for that idea at that point. Whereas now you see similar themes, you see these race across the world shows and stuff like that. It's a lot more kind of appropriate now. But it was cool. It was kind of cutting edge. It was an amazing adventure, and it really gave me a kind of feeling of being in front of the camera, delivering to camera not under pressure, but under quite difficult circumstances sometimes, because we found ourselves in some pretty weird places, as you can imagine. Won't go into all of that, but
oh, please.
The other part of it was that people got to follow our journey on a website and set us challenges. We had to update a diary, and then if we didn't complete, I think it was 2 challenges a week, we got sent home. So, like, for example, one challenge was eat guinea pig in Peru. And at that point we were in Mexico, and they were like, okay, you got to get to Peru and find where serves guinea pig and eat it, film it, and you survive for another week, kind of thing. So there was all sorts of weird and wonderful challenges like that. Cliff diving in Acapulco, and they're the ones that find Paddington in Peru. That was a weird one. So to go back to your original question about doing the TV, I think there probably was something in me that was already interested in that. And when the chance came to do some commentary with Nick, that came about purely because I was in the office at Dorna anyway. I was doing the writing for the website and the press releases and things. And like most companies, they were looking for a cheap way to, the cheapest possible way to do whatever they could. Yeah. And I was on the books, I was staff. So a position come up alongside Nick, and who was a freelancer. And probably quite expensive, relatively. And they went, right, Mark, how do you feel about sitting in next to Nick and doing some commentary? And I was like, yeah, of course. And there didn't seem to be a great deal of pressure at that point, because I didn't know who was listening to it, if you know what I mean. Like, it was a world feed, so I knew it was going out in Australia, but it wasn't overly produced. There was no direction, there was no gallery, there was no talk back. I just went in with Nick, we sat down, we watched the world feed, and when the MotoGP logo came up at 11 o'clock or 10:30, whatever time the broadcast started, we picked up the microphones and started talking. And then when it finished, we put them down again, and no one said well done, no one said you haven't done well, no one gave us any kind of feedback. This is kind of before, the internet was around, but it was well before social media. So there was no kind of pressure to perform particularly under those conditions. And, that was in a way a good thing and in a way a bad thing, because I didn't really know how well I was doing at it. But it gave me an opportunity to kind of learn and get some experience and develop.
So to learn without pressure as well, I think in a nice way. In this day and age, everybody's watching.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's got an opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes it very difficult then to be able to concentrate on what you want to do without being distracted by social media.
Yeah.
So it was a decent grounding for you, especially alongside Nick as well.
Yeah, I think nowadays you've got to be thick-skinned, haven't you? And have a strong personality to be able to deal with criticism, because there's always going to be people who don't like it. That's just the nature of it. It doesn't matter who you are, how good you are, what level you're at. Someone's not going to like you, and they tend to be the most vocal people. So you have to be able to, I think, learn how to take that on the chin, which is not easy when you're young. I
suppose it's easy now. Maybe easier, but
yeah. I think it's easier. I think it's easier as you get older. Yeah, for sure. And you get a bit more confident in your abilities, and I don't ever really listen to. But I take criticism, constructive criticism, but I wouldn't listen to somebody who was just being offensive. But maybe when you're younger, you're a bit more prone to that, a bit more vulnerable. And I didn't have to deal with that, so that was good.
What was the best race that you commentated on with Nick? I had to listen to a couple of they've done it on MotoGP.com. They've run a series of shorts on Valentino Rossi, and I know that you were on co-coms at Welcome for his first Yamaha win and Jerez 2005 with Gibernau. Where do they rank amongst the favourite races that you commentated on?
Yeah, well, I was going to say Jerez 2005.
Because, great, I've answered the question for you. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate.
No. I mean, Welcome was a piece of history. You know, it was like, it wasn't an amazing race. It was a good race. It was a really good race. It was a cat and mouse race with Biaggi, and you know there was obviously history there as well. It was a great story. You know, a romantic kind of ideal race in a lot of ways. And one of those, like, I was there for that moment. You know, I was actually there. Something that's, you know, no one can ever take away. But in terms of the most exciting race, the one that really stands out to me, if I just, you know, try and think back, it was Jerez 2005. Everybody remembers the last corner, but actually there was so much more to that race, and Sete was incredible in that race. And actually he came from, if you remember, he came from a long way back on the last lap to lead. There were passes in those, you know, like I said, everyone remembers the last corner, but there were passes in those fast rights around the back that were like unbelievable, you know, incredible. And Sete was a funny character, a bit of a strange individual in some ways, not everybody's cup of tea, but he had worked so hard to get to that point, and there was so much riding on that for him, and he was skillful, you know, on his day he was superb. And I don't know, and then the drama of the final corner, of course, but there was more to that race than just the final corner. And again, another one of those I was there kind of moments, really.
So from there, as just to refer to my notes slightly, 2008, is that when you made the step to the BBC? Was it 08 or 06?
06.
It was 06. I know, I got both written down, and I couldn't quite pinpoint the time. So 06, when BBC got the rights for MotoGP.
No, they got the rights slightly before that.
Okay.
So they, if memory serves correctly, they took highlights in 04. And they had Susie come to a few races. She kind of like fronted it, and then they used Wilfie commentary on the highlights.
Right.
You know, so they just clipped up what was already on. And then in 05, they came into it properly with commentary. And what they did was, so Gav was working for Dorna we were working together at Dorna, me and Gav, at that time. And Gav was on the world feed in 04. He was the pit lane reporter. So when the BBC came in 05, they asked Dorna if they could use Gav as their pit lane reporter, which Gav did. Now, this is a bit of a long story, and I think I said it on Chrissy and Dom's, but for anyone who's not heard that before, me and Gav go back a long way.
Yeah.
We're really close friends, and we met at university. And when I first got the job at Dorna in end of 2000, I was there for like a few months, and I went on holiday with Gav. Lad's holiday. I was telling him all about my new job, and he was working in recruitment in London. And then after I got back off that holiday, my boss at Dorna said, do you know anyone else who might be interested in coming to work for us who's a bit like you, whatever? And I was like, yeah, I've got the ideal person. Put Gav in touch. So I gave Gav a leg up into Dorna at that time, and we were living together, traveling together, everything. We did everything together. We're still really, really, well, I would say we're like brothers, really, me and Gav. And what happened then was, I actually left Dorna in 2005 because I was a bit unhappy, and I went back as a freelancer to work as a commentator. But by that time, 2005, I was freelance. I was doing other stuff in Spain, in Barcelona, doing different bits of commentary and journalism and stuff. And basically, Gav, at the end of 2005, Gav got offered a massive promotion at Dorna to become a department director. I'm sure he doesn't mind me sharing this. And it was a really difficult decision for him at the time, because he was like, I've just done a year on the BBC as a pit lane reporter. It's really cool. It's exciting. But financially it wasn't that great. And professionally, he was being offered a massive opportunity here, but it would mean that he couldn't do the BBC thing anymore. And Gav, I remember the conversation now. We were laying in the twin room in Phillip Island. You know,
picture the scene, ladies and gentlemen.
It was like Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street. And I was, and he said, listen, if I take this job, it's going to open up an opportunity at the BBC there for you, if you want it. And I was desperate for it, but I had to be really objective as his friend and said, listen, of course I would love to do that, but you need to weigh everything up. This is a big opportunity, blah blah blah. And I tried to be as objective as a friend as I could possibly be, whilst at the same time going, just take it. And anyway, that's what happened. So Gav took that job as he became director of communications at Dorna, and I took the BBC role, which was brilliant for me, and I'm forever indebted to Gav for that. And it's just kind of funny how I sort of helped him get into it in the first place. Then he gave me the break that I needed to do what I'm doing now. And I'm so happy that it's worked out how it has, because a few years later, the BBC thing ended, BT started, and Gav went there and went back to pursuing what he really loves doing. Because being a director of a department, it turned out wasn't his cup of tea after all.
I can understand that. I've only met Gav a couple of times, but seeing what he does and his passion for the sport, the same as you and anybody else who works in the motorcycle racing sport, on site and involved, it's absolutely the pinnacle, isn't it? Being sat in an office somewhere else, yes, you're directing the way round, but it doesn't beat being there, does it?
No, and being a manager of a department or a director of a department or whatever, it carries so much responsibility and so much of the stuff that you don't really want to have to do, budgets and staffing and all that kind of carry on. And to do that at such a young age was probably something he wasn't really that ready for, but are also really interested in. And now he's doing his passion, and that's the ultimate for anyone, I think, is just to do what you're passionate about. And I'm so happy that that's what he's doing now.
How difficult is a pit lane role? We've seen what Simon Crayfar's doing on the World Feed this year, and again, under the lines of social media, poor Simon gets such a bum steer from that. But you've been in that situation, you've been in that position. I think Ian Wheeler was another one that did the pit lane for Dorna at some point as well. God bless him. That
was under Gav's stewardship, by the way.
Was it really?
Yeah, Gav hired him.
And fired him?
And fired him, yeah. No, I think he left.
Another great man
brilliant. Yeah.
Another great man that we have a lot of time for, is Ian Wheeler in the world of motorcycle racing.
Yeah.
But so I guess the commentary side helps you while you're on site, get to know some of the riders, people behind the scenes, but it doesn't really prepare you for being stood in front of a camera?
No, it doesn't. Oh, so you're talking about doing the pit lane stuff for the BBC, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, that sort of transition. Yeah,
that transition. Sorry, my problem.
Yeah, no, the beauty of working for Dorna for me was not so much doing the commentary, it was more the other stuff around it. I mean, I don't think half the paddock, or even 90% of the paddock, probably didn't even realise that I did the commentary. They knew me as a guy who worked for Dorna. I was doing interviews, pre-race, post-race, after every free practice. I was going up and down. Like for Dorna, we would, it seems unbelievable now, but say, take someone like Mika Kallio, right? When Mika Kallio first came through in 125s, we wanted to get it out there in Finland that they had this guy who was doing this stuff. So I would go and interview Mika on an MP3 player after a session, get him to speak in English, get him to speak in Finnish, then I'd go back to the office and email the MP3 file to the Finnish radio stations to try and get him on Finnish radio. That was the kind of thing. But not just him, he's just an example. We would do that for all of the sort of lesser known nations or whatever, to try and raise the profile of these guys. So I spent years going around interviewing Marco Melandri in his underpants after every session, the sort of stuff that you like to do now, Dave, in BSP. Although you insist on them being in their underpants, Marco just usually,
Do you know the secret to this, Matthew?
Go on.
I get to edit this.
Be careful.
I will leave that in, just so you know.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, no, so someone like Casey, for example, and with those kids particularly, I was lucky because they came in 2001, 2002, and they were effectively paid for by Dorna, so they'd be on the same travel plans as us. So Danny Pedrosa, Tony Elias, Joan Olive at the time, Raul Hara, Casey, Chaz, we'd be on aeroplanes together and in airports together and all that stuff. So that was like an incredible, I didn't really think about it at the time. But when we sort of fast forward to 2006 now, and I'm a pit lane reporter, and these guys are like, oh, look at you, you're on the telly now, joking. I would be interviewing like Danny, Casey, these guys, and they knew me as I don't know, maybe friend is probably too strong, but they knew me, and it was relatively easy for me. So for the Beeb coming in as a new broadcaster into that environment, same with Gav in 2005, they had an in, and that was great. So we were able to add value in that way, that I could go and, especially when we started doing grid interviews, I could go to Casey on the grid. He would hardly speak to anybody on the grid. If it wasn't me or Gav, generally speaking, he would either not talk or he wouldn't give much away. And obviously that was an advantage for us that we tried to use.
But that's the avenue you need. That's how it works.
Yeah.
It's people who in the relationships you build, that Casey would speak to you and trust you to ask the right questions and give you the time of day. And not stitch him up. Yeah, exactly, which is so important.
Yeah.
Which I've got your stitch-up questions at the bottom here, to be fair. I've got you here on the pretense I'm not going to stitch you up, but
okay.
I'll keep them at the bottom there.
Yeah, that's fine. So as for standing in front of the camera, it was daunting at first. I'm not going to lie, but it was kind of a slow introduction because I'd do a pre-recorded piece first before I did a live, and then maybe I would, on the live shots, live interviews, I wouldn't be actually on camera. I'd just kind of stand behind it and sort of built into it a little bit like that. But yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking at first.
So from that side, how did the transition then go to front of house presenting with the BBC and then into Eurosport? Talk to us about the transition there, how that happened. So
that happened because at Shanghai 2007, Susie got poorly, and obviously we're in China, so you're not going to call Claire Baldwin up and ask her to jet out. And I got a call off the producer Belinda in my bedroom in China at 7 a.m. on the Sunday, and she said, you're going to have to present today. And I was like, right, okay. She's like, Susie's really sick. Susie was having some health problems at that time, and and she said, you're gonna have to do it, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, of course, I'm up for it. She's like, right, great. It's only a 10-minute, because those flyaways at the time, European rounds on the Beeb would do a half-hour build-up to a race, and we'd come on air at 12:30 and the live race would start at 1. Those flyaway ones, you'd come on air 10 minutes, 10 to 1, you'd pretty much have time to do hello, welcome, 5-minute grid walk, hand to comms. That was it. So my first show was Shanghai 2007, and I was absolutely bricking it. There's not a lot, I don't think, that can really prepare you for it, because you're thinking about all the things you shouldn't think about, which is how many people are watching, what if I make a mistake, all those negative aspects that just fog your brain so much and make you nervous about things that ultimately don't matter and only serve to have a negative impact on your performance. So I've watched it back before now, and it's awful because I can see the fear. I look back at myself and I think, shit, I was so scared. But I got through it. I muddled through it, and I got away with it. And then there was I don't know if before the end of 2007, there was another one. I don't think there was. Maybe there was. And then Susie decided that she didn't want to do the flyaways anymore because, as I said before, it's pretty common knowledge, she had some health issues, and she said it herself. All the long distance flying at that time wasn't good for her. So because they had these 10 minutes build up, my next contract then was I was going to be a reporter, but for the flyaways I would present. So a bit like I did in Shanghai, but exactly that, same thing, but for the flyaways. So I just kind of made that again like a small step towards that next stage, if you like. And again, it was one of those where you don't get any help, you don't get any direction. I had to badger the Beeb to get some training, because I was like, listen, you guys are asking me to do this. I've had no formal training in it. There's not another job, I don't think, in the world where you would throw somebody into such a high-pressure environment, such a high-profile job, without some kind of support or preparation. But that's what TV is like. And then what happens is you get judged straight away. So if you're shit, you just don't get to do it again. That's just the way it is. So I managed to get a day's presenter training at the Beeb, which was great, actually. And I took away a lot of stuff from that I still sort of fall back on now. But that took like a year or two to actually get that to happen. And then, the transition then to be the full-time presenter was took a bit longer than I thought it might.
You've just thrown to me now and I've just put a nut in my mouth. Thanks, mate. You were ready for that, weren't you? You were just waiting.
Yeah. To spoil it.
And they're really good as well. What are they? God, they're hot.
Spicy nuts.
Wow. Back to Marco Melandri again.
The barman said spicy nuts, and I said, no, it's just the way I'm standing.
We could be here for a while, Matthew.
Yeah, no. So do you want me to talk about...
Please do.
Yeah, I'll carry on, shall I? All right, well...
It was then the transition from the BBC to Eurosport.
Yeah, well, there was a stage before that, which was sort of becoming the main anchor on the Beeb, and that happened it happened in 2011. But the year, so Susie decided to stop doing MotoGP for a while at the end of 2009, and I went down and had a meeting with the producer at the time, who was not the producer who gave me the initial opportunity. It was a different person, and I just said, look, I know that Susie's finishing. I just kind of want to put my name forward. I feel like I've got the experience now. I've got the contacts. I've done these flyaway races. I felt like I was probably the logical choice. And I just wanted him to know that I was up for it and just wanted to put myself out there. And what came back was, I feel that you're a really good reporter, but you're not a presenter.
Wow.
So we're going to go a different way. We're going to bring somebody else in, and you can continue as a reporter. And I took that a little bit hard, I thought, okay, but I accepted it because, as far as I was concerned, this was a person with a lot of experience in the industry who knew what they were talking about. So I felt, okay, well, I need to get better then. I need to, obviously I've not done enough. I need to try and improve. And and as that year progressed, I just thought, I disagreed, put it this way, I disagreed with that decision that was made at that time. And I just said, look, I feel like if I'm going to progress, and I've always been quite determined to progress as much as possible year on year. I'm still like that now. If I'm not doing something that's new and different and I'm not making progress, I get, frustrated. So I just said, listen, if you don't think I can present, or you don't see me as a presenter on this, that's fine. This is not an ultimatum, but I won't continue next year. I'll go and do something else. Because if I've hit my limit here, that's okay. But that means I have to take a sideways step if I want to progress. So that was the conversation that I had. And anyway, I'm not exactly sure how and why it happened, but then in 2011, I did get the opportunity to become the main anchor, and luckily I got to do that for 3 years. It was like that was a dream come true, really. From over a 10-year period to get to that point. It was something, as a kid, I couldn't have really imagined to be a main anchor on BBC for a sport, for any sport. And again, that's something that I'll always take with me. No one can take that away from me. I did it, and I'm really proud that I got to do it. And it ended a bit sooner than probably hoped, but that's fine. That's the way it goes.
How much do you enjoy the travelling? Because MotoGP is relentless. Even back then, and what was it, 16, 18 rounds, I think, maybe at the time. This year, 21, which I can't even imagine the stress it puts people in the paddock under. But how much did you enjoy the travelling and getting to know and be a part of that paddock? Did you, as a follow-on question to that, did you have the ability to be in the moment and enjoy the time while you were there, or was it very intense at each round?
Oh, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And I was lucky because Gav was there with me, to be honest. We were doing that together. We shared that experience. Told you already how close I am with him, and a lot of that stuff brought us even closer. And so I look back on it really fondly. There were other friends that I made there too. There was a group of about 5 or 6 of us, and for a few years it was just a blast. It was everything you would want it to be, really. And I loved the travel. At the beginning, I loved it. It was. I mentioned that E-Trippers show that I did before. It was something that was in me. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world, and that he gave me the opportunity to do that in such an incredible way. To be paid to travel the world. I don't think I took it for granted at the time, but looking back now, I just think, wow, like what an amazing thing to have had happen to me. So I did I do think I made the most of that and I enjoyed it, but I definitely got to a point where I was over it. And I can remember that point really vividly. It was 2012, 11, I think, actually. Might have been 11. But it was at Indianapolis. And I got to the hotel. I travelled a long way to get there. 3 flights, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I got to my hotel room, I threw my bag in the room, and I just looked out the window and I thought, a cool city, bikes everywhere, and I just looked out and I thought, I don't want to be here. I just don't want to be here. And that was a tipping point. And actually, I was in a difficult situation there because my career, what I'd been working all that time towards, was just in a sweet spot. It was just taking off, and I knew I had to commit to it. But in terms of the travel and the lifestyle, I was over it. So I knew it was going to... So those 2 or 3 years, while I was doing the job that I always wanted and that I loved, presenting MotoGP on the BBC, actually inside, it was an effort because the travel and stuff had just got a bit too much for me, and I was over the lifestyle, if you know what I mean.
That's a statement that sort of in equal measure has and hasn't surprised me, because the travel is such a big part of MotoGP and being away for so long. But at that point of time in your career, to understand that and then to accept it, but then still carry on for another 3 seasons, 11, 12, 13, that must have taken an awful lot of commitment from you, both mentally as well as professionally. Because it is still the dream job, but if you're not in the place for it mentally, then it does become even more of a bind, I would suspect.
Yeah, so whether or not I did it consciously at the time, I'm not sure, but what I would say is that, you know, it's important to think about why you're doing stuff. Now, if you're in a job where you don't enjoy it, but it gives you other things, then you have to think about those other things while you're doing the job and not just think about, God, I hate this job. That's it's easy for me to say that, but for me, the travel and the lifestyle, I had to kind of accept it and think, well, this is not good, but look at what it's giving you, you know, and try to look at it like that. So, like I said, I don't know if I did that consciously at the time, but when we found out in 2013 that the BBC thing was going to be over, that they weren't going to renew the rights and they were going to go to BT, there was a part of me that was relieved and happy. I was ready. You know, at Valencia, I remember the final round, people were crying, and, you know, BBC production staff and stuff were all upset. And I remember just sitting there looking at everyone around me thinking, I'm absolutely okay with this. This is fine. So, but I'm pretty philosophical about life and opportunities, and, you know, things happen. That's fine. In terms of the lifestyle, I was like, okay, cool, great. Maybe I'll start a family now if I'm lucky, and maybe I can, you know, look at the other things in life. And then the opportunity. So moving on then to what people know you best for now, making the step into Eurosport, into British Superbikes and World Superbikes, being at home and up, because I think in the early days of Eurosport, you didn't go on site for Worlds too often. No. I know with COVID, we haven't. No, we didn't do Worlds on site at all the first couple of years. So everything, you could work from home. Yeah. The relationship with your good lady wife, Jane. Yeah. Starting a family, all the other good things in life, you can now concentrate on them and still have a job that you loved by joining Eurosport. Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned Jane there, my wife. I've been with her since I was 18. And I wouldn't say she'd put up with all this over the years. I wouldn't like to think of it like that, but she certainly never stood in my way of anything, you know, and she was always, you go do it. If it's what you want to do, go do it. She's still like that now. But I knew deep down that I was away a lot, and we were living in Spain for the first part of that 13 years that I was in MotoGP up to 2007. We were living in Spain, and when I went to a GP, she was on her own. And I knew that. And, you know, at the end of 2007, we actually moved back to UK when I went to work directly for the Beeb. So it was slightly different. But still, you know, when you talk about anyone who works in the paddock, they make a commitment to the series, to the sport, and it's always at the detriment of something else. There's always a counterbalance to that. And for different people, it's different how they manage that, how they weigh that up, what's most important to them. Everyone's unique, and I would never kind of judge anyone for the way they do it. But for me, that balance, it was time to go the other way. Now, I'll be honest, if the BBC had kept the contracts, I would have stayed for another probably 2 years, I reckon. But the fact it ended when it did, I was like, okay, that's fine. It kind of forced my hand a little bit. And I got the opportunity to move to Eurosport, like you said. And my race weekends went from leaving on a Wednesday on a flight somewhere and getting back on a Monday night to leaving on a Friday in the car and getting back on Sunday night. You know, or Saturday morning even. You know, if it's Alton, I'd just jump in the car Saturday morning, there for lunchtime, and I'm back home again on Sunday night. So that was a massive game changer.
Big turnaround.
Yeah.
When you look back on your time in MotoGP, what's the best memory that you have from that time?
Cool, blimey. I think it might sound cheesy, but friendships.
It's not cheesy at all.
There was a period in like 2006, 2005, 2006. Things were like, felt like things were happening, you know? You had the first part of the 2000s, Valentino was so above everyone else. And the machinery was like, from the front to the back, there was a massive disparity. And there was a dearth of like, you know, characters.
Yeah.
And in 2006, you had Nicky. I mean, when he came in 2005, I think that was a massive turning point for the sport. You had the V5, you know, you had different people winning races. You had Bayliss on the Ducati, Capirossi on the Ducati. You had, there was so much that, I don't know, it was like, to me, it started then properly, this MotoGP era that we've got now, different coloured bikes winning. And that coincided with a real good group of friends that we had, myself, Gav, Katie, who used to work for Yamaha, a guy called Steve Westlake, who used to work for Honda, a guy called Chris Hillard, who works for Alpine Stars still to this day, and then a couple of the riders, Colin Edwards, John, Casey. It was just Nicky. There was just a good energy about it. And I think back to like, we went to Laguna, you know, when MotoGP went back to Laguna in 2005, it was a big deal and there was a lot of interest in it, and those weekends were so much fun, man. We'd go to like LA for a couple of days before. We had the premiere of the Faster movie like in Hollywood. I went with Nicky to the LA Dodger Stadium. He threw the first pitch at the Dodgers game. So we all went together, like me, Gav, Nicky, a photographer, Steve Westlake, who was the Repsol Honda press guy at the time. We went in a limousine from across LA to go to the Dodgers game all together. And like, those memories are like, they're the things that stand out to me when you say, what you looking back, like, don't know, Laguna just always, and then Sunday night was always wild as well. So.
That's another podcast another time.
Yeah.
We're doing it. There's stories that can be told and stories that can't be told, and we'll talk about those when we press stop later.
Okay.
They won't go out on air. When you joined Eurosport, you're taken over from Tony Carter, who was a larger than life presenter. I know he was a journo by trade that dropped into the TV role, and everybody knew that Tony was in exactly the same role. How did you embark on making that role your own? Was it just you being you in the same way that TC was? Because however that finished, however that ended, the opportunity came for you. And 8th season coming up in 2022, you're still there. And we'll talk about how it all fits together with Whit and James Hayden and Shaky in a little while. But how did you embark on that journey, making it your own?
Well, I was made to feel really welcome from the very beginning. Firstly by Stuart and by the team at Eurosport, who were lovely. Like the production crew there. Laura, Will, Ren, you know Ren. They're all such lovely people, and they made me feel. This sounds big-headed, but I'm not being. But they seemed excited that I was there, and that made me feel like, okay, I'm valued, and that's what everyone wants to feel. We were talking about that earlier, off air. And I was really made to feel like that. So yeah, I felt like I was able to be myself right from the start and just do what I was doing before. You know, of course, not everyone likes that, and that's all right. But generally, it seemed to be working for me. And I just sort of tried to bring that across. And the first thing I did, really, and I don't know Tony. I didn't know him then. And I've met him once, but I don't know him now. But that was not of any concern to me, frankly, because that's just the way it is. That's the industry sometimes.
That's business.
But my concern was James and James, because I was going to be working with those guys. And the first thing I did was I went down to London. I went to the premiere of an iSuperbiker thing that Mark Sloper put on in London. And then me and Jane and James and Joe, James Hayden's wife I'm talking about, we went out as a foursome and went for dinner after. And then Whit just lives up the road from me anyway, so I met him for coffees and immediately tried to just establish a relationship with those guys that I knew was going to be key to whether or not we were successful as a team. I think that as a viewer, when you sit and you watch, I mentioned that day's training I had at the BBC earlier. One of the things the guy said to me on it was, when someone turns the TV on, you come into their living room. So if you feel awkward, if you're awkward on screen, then they're going to feel awkward, and no one wants an awkward person in their house. So when you first come on, it has to be like they've just opened the door to you, and you go, hi, you know that thing you do when someone opens the door and you're standing on the doorstep. They don't know you're going to be there. This is the old days before, when you used to just go knock on someone's door, and then they'd be like, ooh, someone at the door, and it's not an Amazon order or whatever. Back then it used to be,
who's friends. That? We'll go and answer it and find out.
So you answer the door, and then you know that they're not expecting you, so you go, hiya. And you do that thing that you go, hiya, it's me. So first of all, do that. Go, hiya. And then...
I'm making notes on this.
And then, free tips here. And then, and then also, if the relationship between you and the lads you're talking to is awkward or frosty or whatever, who wants that in their living room? No one, if you invite 3 people around to your house, you want everybody to be, and you also want to feel part of it too. So it's partly having the relationship with the guys you got on screen, but also making the person who's watching feel part of that as well. So that was like one of the best bits of advice I got professionally was on that one day training course. But like I said, it stayed with me. It stayed with me to now. So what we really try and do with the Eurosport thing is have a couple of beers on Friday. I think it's massively important. I'm always on at Greg, because you know what Greg's like. He's like, I'm going to my room to read my notes. I'm like,
super folders.
Stick your notes, Greg. Come and have a beer. It's important. Just so happens that I quite like that side of life anyway.
You and me both.
But
hence why we sat here now with this.
But I think it's great, and we get a bit of chat going, a crack going. Sometimes argue, and that's what friends do.
Yeah.
And then the next day, when the cameras roll, just try and keep that going.
But also, it does come across as a continuation of that. And that's the bit that I personally enjoy, because when you're doing the World Superbikes and people aren't on site, as we are for BSB, you sat there, your audience are listening to you. And the one thing about a motorcycle racing audience, they are knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And that comes across so well that none of you, whether it be James Hayden, James Whittam, Shaky, Lav, when he comes on any of the guests, and never patronising to the viewer, because you know your audience. Yeah. And that must be so important.
Yeah. I think all the people that you just mentioned there, they're all humble guys, and that's one of the good things about our sport. It tends to generate that anyway. These are working class people who also they're in touch with the public constantly anyway. So yes, they know their audience because they speak to them regularly. And when you're in the BSB paddock, as a rider, you're constantly in touch with people. So yeah, they all know the audience. They all know who they're speaking to. And yeah, I think that's a big thing. But for me, I just try to let them. I don't try to be an expert on something I'm not an expert on. I just try to give them. My job is to facilitate them, give them the platform, ask the questions that are going to bring their strengths out.
They're a bit strong.
Yeah.
The nuts are a bit strong, aren't they?
Stop eating while I'm talking.
So far as the Eurosport side goes, it's become an intrinsic part of the broadcast of enjoying how you facilitate both Whit and now Shaky since his retirement. His view. It's a while since Whit's ridden, but he has a massive wealth of experience, both in the comms booth and of riding. And now with Shaky coming on board as well, who's ridden up to 2018, he knows the modern motorcycle. I know Whit's ridden them as well, but he's raced against a lot of the guys that are still out there now. So he brings a different dynamic to it.
Yeah.
And when it does make me smile on a lot of occasions on the Eurosport coverage, you can kind of tell when James Hayden's had a big night the night before. So of the three of them, it still adds to the dynamic of what you do. His voice does go a bit husky sometimes.
I've never noticed that, Dave. I've never noticed. Yeah, no. So, yeah, like you said, Shane has brought something really valuable to the team, I think. But that's not to say that what Whit and James Hayden have got to offer.
It complements it for where the boys are in their careers and what they've done.
Yeah.
To have somebody else there with even more experience of the modern rate of the more up-to-date racing.
Yeah.
Because he's raced against Brooksy, he's raced against Taz McKenzie, he's raced against Tommy Bridewell. Yeah. He knows what they're like as rivals. Yeah. And now making the transition to the other side of the camera, I think that's brought an extra angle that's been welcomed.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And Shane's value is unquestionable in that respect. He's also very articulate, he's very intelligent, he puts his point across really well. But what I like as well that Shane has brought is a different angle, and it gets different stuff out of James Hayden and Whit because they don't see things the same. And that's good. Diversity is a good thing generally in life, in any kind of organisational structure that you've got, any team that you've got. To have diverse opinions and diverse experiences and backgrounds is fundamental. And actually, so rather than having two people standing there who agree with each other all the time, it's great to have people who see things differently. And I try to encourage that actually as much as I can, pull them up sometimes or poke them a little bit, get them arguing. It's great.
But again, that comes back to the conversation you've had the night before. That gives you the in to remember what was said previously. And it is the continuation of the pub conversation, which I think is what makes it work so well.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dave. Yeah. If that was intended as a compliment, I'll take it.
Of course it was. Absolutely, it was a compliment. What's been your most bum-clenching moment on air, for want of a better phrase, where kind of things have gone slightly awry, but you've managed to hold it all together? Because there's things maybe that go on, you have the talk back in your ear as well. There's all sorts going on that we're not privy to as a viewer. God. So what's been the most?
There's so many. I mean, that happens so much. You lose talk back, or the battery on your pack runs out and it goes silent, and you look to the floor manager to tell you how many seconds you've got to a break, and they're looking at their phone. Like, there's all kinds of stuff like that goes on. There's a couple that stand out. One, in terms of sheer nerves, was I mentioned doing the presenting in 2007 when Susie got sick, but actually in 2006, they weren't doing a presentation around Assen because it was a Saturday. But it was on Grandstand, and they were going to show the race live on Grandstand. Now, there's a certain demographic of our audience here that will be familiar with Grandstand and some that won't. But to me, as a kid growing up in the 80s, when you hear that Grandstand music, it just evokes so many things.
Absolutely.
For me, it was like sitting on the sofa with my dad, polishing his football boots, getting ready to go down to the pub where he would meet, and then I would go with him to, Saturdays for me were always about football and Grandstand. And then that day, all I had to do was stand there, and Claire Balding threw to me, and I had to say, "Thanks, Claire." I gave some kind of stat about John Hopkins was on pole position, and then I threw to the commentators, and then same at the end of the race, I just did the same thing. And I was standing up on the podium to do that, and I was gripping that rail so hard because the Grandstand music came on. We were the first thing that was on that day, so I was listening to the Grandstand music, then I could hear Claire speaking, and then she said my name and handed to me, and then I was just standing there just going, "Don't fuck it up," and I sort of scraped through that. My hair, by the way, was shocking that day. But anyway, so that for sheer terror and kind of like, whoa, like, that was one that really sticks out. And then in terms of things going wrong, around that sort of early years of doing the presenting, like 08, 09 time, I was at Phillip Island, and I was doing a grid walk, and there was a 3-second delay on what I was saying and what I was hearing. And that, for anyone, if you're on a phone call and there's a second delay and you're trying to speak to another person, you know how distracting that is. You're just like, oh, I can't deal with this, I'll hang up. There's a 3-second delay, so I had to not only adapt, I couldn't turn the volume down completely because then I couldn't hear the counts. So I had to turn it down to a level where it wasn't distracting me, but that I could still hear the counts, but low enough so that, so high enough that I could still hear stuff, but low enough that it wasn't distracting me, Concentrate on the grid walk, present camera, and then hit my count 3 seconds early or 3 seconds late, whatever it was. That was mental trying to do that. But obviously it was a great experience. But at the time I was just, what did you say? Bum clenching.
Bum clenching, yeah.
That was that.
When you're doing that, and this is maybe an unusual question, can you remember what the riders were saying at the time? Or do you just do the questions are blind and then you're thinking about other things? Yeah,
on those it's so difficult to listen to the rider.
Yeah.
Even without a delay that is forced, because don't forget the earpieces are noise cancelling, so you can't hear anything else apart from what's coming through your microphone. So if there's a 3-second delay on that, I'm looking at you, you're talking, and then I'm hearing it quietly 3 seconds after you've said it. And then I'm thinking about where am I going to go next? How long have I got left? I'm thinking, right, I'm talking to Casey Stoner now. I'm looking like I might go speak to Nicky. Oh, but he's just suddenly started talking to French TV, so I'm not going to be able to go there. I'm going to have to think of something else. Maybe I could talk about tyre warmers for a minute, and then I'll get into Nicky or whatever. All of those things are going around your head. So you're not listening to their answer. And sometimes you watch it back and they've cracked a joke or they said something you're like, oh, if I'd have heard that, I would have probably picked up on it. But you just kind of like, here's a stock question, give me a stock answer, and I'll move on to the next.
And then away we go.
Yeah. And that's why, Witt's brilliant. Now, I know I watch Witt's grid walks. They're so off the cuff. They're so spontaneous. So many things happen on a BSB grid, as you know. And he's a master at that.
He's had an awful lot of experience at it, hasn't he? And I think he's made that grid walk his own, without a shadow of a doubt. Charlie Hiscott's done a fantastic job in World Superbikes doing his grid work.
Charlie's.
We have an awful lot of time for Charlie. Again, somebody else we've known for a lot of years from his time at BSB, and somebody I'd love to have on the show, but has always turned me down, even in the Motopod days.
Has he?
Yeah, he won't come on. He absolutely won't come on. Oh. Ian Wheeler's another one. All these guys, for weirdly, I don't take it personally. They just.
Do you know what? They're very kind of humble people.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not. That's why I'm here. But
because I invited you and I said I'd buy lunch.
Oh, okay. Lunch? Is that what this is?
Well, you decided on the nuts. We could have had a club sandwich.
I didn't realise there was more on the table. Yeah, no. Charlie he struggles to accept praise. He's one of them. He's such a humble guy. He's so nice, and I can imagine why he wouldn't want to do this, because he don't want to make it about himself, but he's got so much to offer. Same with the TV. Like, sometimes we have to persuade him to do we call them postcards, but when he does a little piece to camera from a World Superbike round and sent, it'd be like 30 seconds about what the weather's doing, what the gossip is in the paddock or whatever. Sometimes he needs his arm twisting just to do that, and we're like, because he thinks that people don't want to listen to him or hear from him. Or
we do.
Yeah, we do.
He's an equal part of the team. There's no doubt about it.
Well, let's not go that far.
I'm sure he'll be listening to this. Before we go on to the writing side of things, which is something that interests me a lot, talk to me about the TT. Because with what's going on, we've missed 2 seasons of it. We missed 20 and 21. I saw you over there in 18, which I think was that your first full.
Yeah,
that was your first full fortnight, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You stood in for Craig Doyle previously for a couple of days. Yeah. Talk to me about the TT and your feelings about that place, because that's something completely different to MotoGP, Worlds, and BSB.
Yeah, it's hard to describe it, really. I think on any level, unless you've been, it's just special. Like, the island is special. It's like, I don't know, there's a weird magic about that place. When you go there, you feel it. Maybe not when you go in the middle of winter and foggy and pissing down, but those couple of weeks, especially when it's sunny and I don't know, the whole thing is comparable to a MotoGP atmosphere when you're there and on the starting grid, the helicopter's up, you can hear it. There's a tension on the grid that is so palpable and so difficult to describe. I'd recommend anybody to go and visit. And I can't wait to go back. I love it. I love it.
How do the grid walks differ up there than on a GP grid? Does it feel different? Do you feel a different energy up there?
Yeah.
We were up on Glen Crutchery Road for the Friday night practice in 2018, and it had been a very difficult week with the loss of Dan Neen and then what happened in the aftermath of that with the guys coming back. And it was a real difficult week leading up to that. And on the Friday, I went and stood up on the Glen Crutchery Road and we were watching the guys as the mechanics bring them down to the first holding point and then the riders go on their own to the starting arch. The atmosphere is... I still now struggle to describe it. Watching guys pat their rider on the shoulder and letting them go through that first gate.
Yeah.
How do you, in terms for the TV, you're obviously aware of that, there's no doubt about it, but do you have to change how you approach things?
Yeah, you have to be sensitive. You have to be aware, empathetic to what people's state of mind might be at that point, as a first point. And careful, really careful with your choice of words, I think. Also, something like how loud you're speaking, because it's quiet out there. And I'm always really aware of, am I traipsing around shouting here about,
extolling the virtues of it while people are...
Yeah, trying to get in the zone or whatever. So I think first thing is to be just aware of what's going on around, what people might be thinking, going through, whatever. But, you mentioned it there about the tap on the shoulder and stuff. We're lucky we live in peaceful times, and there might be some people listening to this who are in the military or on the front line of emergency services who deal with things that you and I don't deal with. But I look at the guy getting a tap on the shoulder going off to the TT, and I can only think it's what it must have been like, or what it is like seeing a fighter pilot go off. They take off, and let's be honest, at that point, you don't know if they're going to come back. Thankfully, most of them do. Yeah. But let's not kid ourselves. That's an element of interest about the TT. It's why, it's got that level of extreme commitment. People are really putting it on the line, and it's all kind of that moment there. That's the distillation of all of that, and that's why it's so powerful, I think. So I'm with you. I think it's a really unique grid. It's a really unique moment. It's not really that comparable to anything else. You could sort of say there is an element of that on a MotoGP grid or on a BSB grid, of course, but it's really distilled at the TT.
I can't wait to go back. I'm sure we're back this year, hopefully with Rich Energy OMG Racing and the riders that they're putting out this year, and I can't wait to go back and to do the Northwest as well, which would be something I've never done before. That conversation is really just knocked me a little bit sideways. It does, doesn't it? That's the effect of the TT. In TT 2022, Paul Phillips has announced a whole raft of changes for the broadcast side of things for the TT, that it's going to be broadcast live from the first practice to the very last lap of the senior. How much are you looking forward to that, and what do you think that's going to bring to the viewing public for the TT?
Well, it's a massive undertaking, first of all, and I think one of the things about the pandemic is it's given Paul and his team over there the opportunity to kind of take a step back and look at how far they've come with the TT, where they're at, and what could they do differently. And it's not just the TV coverage that people are going to notice some big differences, I think, when they go back to the TT, and no doubt there'll all be improvements because they've put a lot of work and a lot of time into that. But yeah, as for the TV broadcast, I think we're going to see the TT step up, and probably deep down, a few of us, once the TT got cancelled in 2020, thought, will it ever come back? You always worry for the way the world these days.
It is this day and age, isn't it?
It's got to be a concern, but I think it's going to come back bigger and better than ever. The idea of the live stuff and going to an OTT platform is that it's going to engage people from all over the world. It's not just the lucky 40,000 or whatever who get to access the island during those 2 weeks, or probably more than that. I'm sure there's a massive global market for this product out there, and hopefully this is how it's going to get reached. And yeah, to do it live. I mean, it is a bit of a weird thing. One of the downsides of being there, actually, is you see all the guys take off, and then they're gone, and then you all pile into the press room and you're watching timing monitors, for however long it is till they come back around again.
17 and a half minutes, yeah.
And that's a weird thing. And you're listening to the commentary, the boys out at Ramsey, and they're going, and he's coming through now, and all that is. There's something really sweet about it and really traditional and evocative about it, but also it's way out of date. And so the time has come, not before time, and it's going to be really interesting and really exciting. But I think it's a massive undertaking. I know they've had logistical things like how you get footage back from different parts of the island with a 5G mast that is also people are all using for their mobile phones, for example, like huge logistical obstacles that they're having to overcome. But no doubt they'll do it, and it's going to be amazing. I'm really looking forward to it.
I can't wait. It's going to be something a little bit special. It's exactly what the TT deserves. I've grown up listening to Manx Radio TT commentary, and as you say, you go Glen Helen, and then you go to the Ramsey hairpin, and then back out to the grandstand. And the one good thing about that was it's the typical radio thing. It's theatre of the mind, and people can envision how they want it. It's like us sat here now. They know we're in the Dakota Hotel. They don't know what it looks like, and everybody listening will have a different view of how we're sat, even though we are fully clothed, unlike Marco Melandri. So it takes away that a little bit, but to have that coverage for 2 full weeks is going to be absolutely incredible. Yeah. Are you part of that? Are you ITV? If you can't say? Yeah, because they can replace you.
That would have been a low blow, Dave, wouldn't it? I'm
as if I'd have asked that without realising what the answer might be.
I think I'm probably able to say that there'll be 2 slightly different strands to the broadcast. One will be the live, and then the other will be the highlights as people are kind of accustomed to seeing. So
excellent. So you still get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, you get the best of both worlds. Yeah.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah,
we'll look forward to that. Very best of luck involved on that side of things, and I can't wait to see you out there. That's going to be an amazing fortnight. Moving on to the writing side, I'm aware we've been doing this for an hour already, which I'm very grateful for your time as always. Talk to me about the writing side. I think, would I be right in saying the first foray into books was translating Jorge Lorenzo's autobiography, and then moving on to doing your own thing with Casey and with Steve Parrish, Shaky, and lately with John Hopkins. How did that side develop for you? Well, I suppose writing was always kind of my passion, really. I mean, I ended up doing the TV thing, but it was only because I was interested in, fundamentally, I wanted to be a sports journalist, I wanted to be a writer. And through working in MotoGP, I got to spend a little bit of time with a guy called Rick Broadbent, who's a writer for The Times. Great guy, really, really good fun, and a brilliant writer. And I sort of developed more of an interest in the book side, because that's what he was doing. He was doing his stuff. He'd write brilliant. I was always amazed. Rick could come to a race, having not been for a year, and then just pick out so much colour and write the most wonderful piece. And for The Times, who he wrote for, well, still writes for The Times now. But anyway, Rick was doing a couple of book projects, and I actually ended up getting involved with him a little bit. So let me just try and get the sort of the chronology of this right. Rick asked me to help him with a piece that he was writing about Hugo Sanchez, Mexican footballer. Football fans who were same age as us will remember him, somersaults and
goals for Real Madrid. And he got a number, and he said, listen, if I give you this number, will you ring it? I want to do an interview with Hugo Sanchez. I can't remember why, but anyway, I did, and I rang this number. I spoke to Hugo Sanchez on the phone, and I interviewed him. I transcribed it. I sent it to Rick, and he used it for his piece. It worked really well. And then he said to me, right, I'm doing this book. It's a boxing book. It's about a Welsh boxer called Johnny Owen, who died in, I think, 1980, 81, around that time. Died in the ring. He got knocked out by a Mexican fighter, and unfortunately passed away as a consequence of that. And Johnny Owen is a local legend in Merthyr Tydfil, where he's from, national legend, really, in Wales. The boxer who he was fighting against that night was a Mexican called Lupe Pintor. And Rick said, I'm writing this book about Johnny Owen. I've got a number to ring this guy Lupe Pintor. Could you call it, speak to him, and see if he would be willing to meet for an interview? And if he is, me and you will go to Mexico and interview him. So I was like, okay. So I rang this number. Oh, by the way, I could speak Spanish, which maybe people might not realise. Yeah. And I spoke to his wife, and she was like, yeah, he'll be back later, call him back. So anyway, I ran back, spoke to this guy, Lupe Pintor, and I said, would you be interested in collaborating with this book? If so, could we come and visit you? And he said, yeah, please, I would love that. Come out, be my guest. So me and Rick flew to Mexico together, spent like 4 or 5 days in Mexico City, went to his house, got absolutely hammered on whiskey with the guy. And it was a really lovely story, because I know we're going on a tangent here.
No,
but,
it's fine.
So Lupe Pintor had been, ultimately not responsible for Johnny Owen's death, but the man who delivered the blow, if you like, and took that with him, and said that every fight he ever had after that, he took Johnny Owen's spirit with him into battle. Whereas, the outside sort of view of that might be, there's that horrible Mexican man who killed our hero. It was completely opposite to that. And in fact, he came over to Wales and had unveiled a statue of Johnny Owen, and it was a lovely, but it was the first time anyone had really sat down with him and spoke to him about it. So that day, he was like, we sat down in his living room, and he was like, do you guys drink whiskey? And I'm like going, Rick, he says, do we drink whiskey? And Rick's like, not really. And I was like, yeah, but I can't say no to the guy. Like, what are we going to do? And he's like, all right, just say yes. So
tell him yes.
2 massive whiskeys, 3 massive whiskeys. I'd not really drunk whiskey before, so we were hammered. But anyway, I digress. I had a lot of time for Rick, really looked up to him. And he gave me some insights on how you would go about doing a book. And because I looked up to him so much, I thought, yeah, I want to do a book. I want to do that. I feel I can do that. So the most obvious thing at that point for me to do was, I was pretty close with Casey at the time. Was fairly sure his career wasn't going to be that long. And I said to him, if you ever want to do an autobiography, please let me do it. And I spoke to his dad about it as well. And then, his dad, shortly before the big shock announcement at Le Mans in 2012, Colin, his dad, rang me and he was like, you know what you said about doing an autobiography when he retires? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, how about we do one at the end of this year? And I was like, shit. Okay. So that's how that started. And did that one. I'd done the translation, as you said, of Lorenzo's already, so I knew kind of like, in terms of hours, how much you need to commit to producing a particular number of words. I think the Lorenzo one was like 60,000, 70,000 words, and the Stoner one was like 80,000. So just logistically, I kind of knew what that would take, and I knew a lot about his story anyway. I was really committed to. I had a personal kind of interest in Casey, because I felt he was really misunderstood, because I knew him quite well personally. I knew what a sweet, honest, charming guy he really is, kind and super talented. And I felt he was misunderstood, and I really wanted to, my kind of mission was to change that.
And a mission that I think it did, because, as you say, a lot of people just saw the media side of Casey. And I think because he was such a challenge to Valentino at the time, a lot of people missed out just how bloody good he was on a racing motorcycle. Yeah. And the same happened with Mark as well, because he was a challenge, and Jorge, there's a challenge to Valentino. Yeah. People miss just how talented these guys are. Yeah. But because the media side of Casey was so strong, and he came across in such a difficult way sometimes. Yeah. I think the book absolutely served to see that wasn't the side of him that people thought.
Yeah. And that's human nature. I mean, we all make assumptions about people based on our first interaction with them. And if that interaction is a media interview for a kid who's suddenly shot to fame, who doesn't want to be famous, who's not really got any education, and also had really missed out socially during his upbringing because of his commitment and his parents' commitment to his racing, he was socially inept, frankly, and he said that himself. So stick him in front of a camera and get him to talk and then expect people to like him, that's a big ask. So we're all guilty of doing that. We're all guilty of saying he's this way or he's that way without stopping to think, why is he like that?
Yeah.
Why does he speak like that? What's his background? How's he feeling today even? You know, sometimes we're like, oh, he was rude. He might not be rude, he might be shy. But we oftentimes don't stop to think like that. And once the ball got rolling with Casey, I think he saw what the reaction was. He didn't really know how to deal with the media. He didn't know how to change that. And in terms of Valentino, if you're talking about competing personalities, you know, he's on a loser from the start there because you're talking about an absolute one-off. So it was a difficult time for him to try and cope with all that. And yeah, I think that for the Casey book, for me, there was two things that I really wanted to find out. There was two things about Stoner that people didn't understand, right? One, why is he so fast? Two, why is he retiring so early? And the two things went hand in hand, as I'd sort of discovered as we went in. Why was he so fast? Because he started so young. Because he was under so much pressure from such an early age. The amount of practice he did, the type of practice that he did, the pressure that he was under to perform, that all made him incredibly fast with a unique skill set, good or bad, in terms of whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
I agree.
He had a unique skill set, but also that was massively contributory factor to his decision to retire early because, you know, ultimately the two things were wrapped up together. So it was an interesting kind of journey to get to that, and it was fun.
A fascinating character to start the first book with as well. And one thing I will make a nod to is, as you mentioned, Rick Broadbent, two of the best motorcycle racing books I think ever written in Ring of Fire and the near death thing about the TT.
Yeah.
I can't recommend them highly enough for anybody who hasn't read them to please download them on the Kindle, have a look in the shops, have a read of those two books. The feeling that you get from those two that Rick portrays, absolutely fabulous pieces of work.
Yeah, and the Johnny Owen book, by the way, is called The Big If you're interested in that.
And that one as well, if you're into, for the boxing fans as well. Yeah. I know there are some out there as well. So, after Casey Stoner came Steve Parrish, a completely different story.
Yeah.
With a completely different character as well. To then Shane Byrne again. All four characters that you've done so far are completely different with completely different stories. It was at this point in proceedings that we realised the comfort break would be useful. We'd already been chatting for an hour before we even started the podcast. So in an unprecedented step on Off Track Podcast, we did actually break the recording for just a little comfort break. Back to me and Matt at the Dakota Hotel in Manchester. Back to the writing side of things, Matt. We've got on to Steve Parrish and the four different characters that you've constructed a book for as autobiographies. What's the process?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, it's varied with the different guys, but with Steve, I just went down and with Steve, there was a lot of going through scrapbooks and stuff. His late ex-girlfriend, Linda, lovely lady, don't know if you knew Linda, she worked for IRTA. She's Sam Corser's mum. Unfortunately, she passed away 2 years ago, something like that, but lovely lady, and she was really sweet. While she was Steve's girlfriend during the 70s and 80s, she'd kept scrapbooks and handed them over, and there was loads of cool stories in there and newspaper clippings and things like that. So there was a lot of that stuff to go through with Steve. So it was a case of going to his house, sitting down and going through it, and if he started talking about something, I would record him. But there was piecing things together, and Steve's book is kind of a collection of anecdotes, really. They're like funny stories, and honestly, some of it was difficult to stitch together to get it into a flowing narrative, because it might just be a daft story about a practical joke he pulled on someone, and I didn't want the book to be just a series of daft practical jokes. Some people might say that's what it is, but I tried to make it not that, and try to
have a narrative as well.
Try and have a narrative that flows through the book, and also, pick it up at some points. And then there's obviously some real sad things that were related to racing at that time. And, So that was how that worked. It would be days at his house recording, and occasionally I would call him up or whatever. Shaky was similar. Like, I'd go down to his house and just get hours and hours of conversations, really. And we'd sort of started with some general stuff because this was just around the time that he got injured, and then there would be specific things that would go. I didn't want it to be a chronological account of his life per se, but you kind of do have to do that, just to make sure you don't miss anything out. So, like, go back to your childhood. And with Shane, I'd sort of got to a point where I really felt I needed to focus a little bit more. What I'd found from doing cases, perhaps, and then reading other books in between, was like the little details are really important when you're trying to paint a picture. So, for example, Shane told me about his home where he grew up, and I'd say, "What did it smell like there?" And he'd be like, that's a weird question, but in terms of painting a picture for a reader, it's actually really important, all those little details. So, and I would go through it like, all right, so at this age, and especially the early part of Shane's life, for anyone who's not read it, he was adopted. There were a lot of questions that he'd never asked his mum about his adoption because he never felt it was important to him or it was necessary to bring it up. So I was like, where were you born? He knew he was born in Lambeth Hospital. I was like, so who named you? He was like, I don't know. I was like, were you called Shane already? Or did you have a different name? And he was like, I don't know. He knew his surname was different, naturally. But and he knew what it was. It was Price. It's funny, isn't it? So he's called Shane Byrne, right? But so I was like, I wonder if it was Shane Price. And I was like, well, do you think we could ask your mum about that? Would you be comfortable to ask your mum about it? He's like, yeah, let's go ask her now. So we jump in the car, go around to his mum's house, and him and his mum, hilarious together. I mean, she calls a spade a spade. She is like, "Oi, Shane, get inside here." And he was like, so Matt wants to ask you some questions. And he was like, ask what you want, mate. I don't care, just ask what you want. So I was like, okay. Like, quite a daunting situation. Yeah. Mrs. Byrne, she's not to be messed with. And I'm like, am I going to get the old famous slipper here? Or so I've said, what was his name when you picked him up? And she went, he was called Stephen. And he sat there next to me and he goes, you fucking what? Stephen? And she's like, yeah, Stephen. He said, well, why the fuck did you call me Shane then? And she said, well, I just liked it. So that was quite a funny moment, but it was a bit of a journey of discovery, all that early stuff. Yeah. And piecing together those details was quite interesting.
It's almost like a who do you think you are?
Yeah, it kind of was, really. But, I mean, if you'd have done that properly, you'd have had to find his biological parents, which he didn't want to do. He's not interested in that. He knew enough to be able to paint a little bit of a picture, or at least what he thinks he knows. Let's be honest about that. So we got a little bit of that stuff, but we could have gone much deeper into all that, but he didn't want to, which is understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it's a case of how much of that do you need? How much are you going to use? Is it relevant? What's the narrative? And then we sort of worked through it, and we just hours. I must have got probably 25 to 35 hours worth of recorded interviews transcribed to then kind of the process from that is literally just transcribe it, then think to yourself, okay, this bit is going to go well in this part, that links to that, and that's the joy of that process. I used to love that. It's like putting a jigsaw together. You're like, there'd be a bit where you're like, oh shit, this is quite an interesting story, but I don't know where it's going to go, and then you're like, something else comes up and you're like, oh, wicked, that links back so I can do this, and do you know what I mean? So that's the fun bit, really, is piecing it all together once you've got it all transcribed. And I followed the same process really for John, for Hopkins, although it was all on Skype, really. I did a few face-to-face, and then he was back in America during lockdown, so we had to do a lot of it on Skype. But it's a similar kind of process, really.
Which leads me on to the question I was trying to ask before, which I should have done it in a reasonable order, so thank you for putting me on the right track with that one. Of all the books that you've done, which moment, as you've listened back to something or you've had a conversation, has really sort of left your mouth agape to something that you didn't know or a story that you were told? And did it make it into the book? Maybe I shouldn't have added the last
All right,
bit.
let's put it this way. There's a couple in the Stoner one that didn't make it into the book, and I can't really say because there's a reason why they didn't want them to go in.
That's why I'm not asking.
I respect their privacy on that. But I mean, one thing that left me like mouth agape with the Stoner one was the amount of riding he was doing as a kid, how young he started, the exercises that his dad used to make him do. So he used to make him do figure of eights without putting his feet down. Then he'd throw water down. And at the time, actually, I read. Have you ever read Bounce by Matthew Said? It's about 10,000 hours practice, talent over practice over talent.
I have, because when we spoke at Alton Park earlier in the season with Dom Herbertson.
Did I bring it up then as well?
You brought it up. No, you did, because then I downloaded it.
Oh, okay.
And I'm about halfway through. I go backwards and forwards with some books.
Yeah.
And it was, the 10,000 hours of practice and how talent is opportunity and practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is how that comes together.
Yes, talent is opportunity and practice. Yeah, and that's what Casey had. His dad stuck him on a bike from an extremely young age, but not just stuck him on a bike. He drilled him. Like Andre Agassi's father in a different way, but similar in that he was doing stuff that other kids just weren't doing, and he developed a skill set that when you hear Ben Speed say, I look at Casey on a bike and think, I can see what he's doing, but I just can't do that. That came from somewhere, and that came from those drills that he was doing as a kid. And so that was a bit of like a wow, I'm onto something that's amazing. Probably with Steve, like there was a couple of things I was like, I don't know if it's the first chapter or maybe the second chapter. We talk about an old friend of his called Pierswell Forrester, who was an aristocrat who died at Brands Hatch in a crash. He was a big friend of Barry's and Steve's, and they're all part of the scene in London and that. And I was like, okay, and I'm like writing this stuff down, and this sounds sort of interesting. And then when we looked in his scrapbook that Linda had put together, it was front page news in the Daily Mirror. There was a whole front page dedicated to this guy's death. I was like, oh shit, wow, it was a big deal. He was a socialite at the time, the equivalent to, well, let's not put a death wish on anybody, but one of our current famous for no reason celebrities.
There's a few of those around.
Yeah, and probably the early stuff with Shaky, like his discovering, being next to him when he discovered what his actual given.
That's hugely personal, isn't it?
Yeah, very personal, yeah. And very privileged to be in that position, for him to open up like that to me and to everybody who's reading the book. And then definitely for Hopkins, I mean, pretty much everything went in to that book. Everything he told me, he had no qualms about anything, because the beauty of John is, and he said something to me that was early in the process, and I was like, yes, this is good. He said, there's a lot of things I'm not proud of that I've done, but I'm proud of the man I've become because of the things that I've done. He was a man who's completely at peace with himself. He's been to the very bottom. He's been to the abyss. He's seen, like, he's got nothing to hide from anybody. He's rightly proud of where he's come back to from where he was. So all that stuff that came before that is kind of important to tell, because it's made him who he is, but also he's not ashamed of it. And it's not in a boastful way either. He's talking about strippers and drugs and stuff, not in a boastful way, He's a different person now, but he's telling those stories because they've made him who he is. And for us, it makes a great read, frankly. So there was the one that made me my mouth drop with John was he got to smuggling drugs over the border from Mexico back into the US in 2009 when he was 8, end of 08, and I just couldn't believe that. I was so shocked when he told me that, and then actually we used that then as the first part of the book, where he's getting stopped at the border and getting interviewed by border control.
What a story to tell. I only just started reading it. I bought it for Jennifer for Christmas, and because I was very fortunate in knowing some people that we do. The book went across into Europe. John signed it. It's on the bedroom table. And she hasn't opened it yet. She's not got past opening the cover to see.
But you have.
On Kindle. Do we know the next project on the writing side yet? Is the one on the horizon, or nothing in the pipeline just yet?
No, I think I'm done with motorbike ones, to be honest.
Yeah.
John was the one that I really wanted to do.
I was going to say, how do you top that for a story?
Yeah, I think my feeling was if I can't do a good job with that story, I should give up anyway. And yeah, it's going to be difficult to kind of get motivated to do another one because I don't think there is another story like his. But also, I was talking before about progress and challenging myself and moving on. If I'm going to do another book, it will be about something else. I will do another book in the future. I would like it to be about something else.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And we'll look forward to that one. Go back to BSB. 2021 season was incredible. From your point, how invested do you get in the championship? You're there across the weekend. You're talking to the guys that are involved. How invested do you get in the championship, and how much do you feel of what's going on within the championship?
Very. Yeah, you can't help it. You know, you see these guys a lot around, see their families, what they put into it. Understanding a little bit more now about even the team dynamics and the sacrifices that people make to get on the grid. You can't help but get wrapped up in it. That's, you know yourself, Dave, from being in the paddock. It's just because you do the job that I do doesn't make any difference to anybody else in that respect, I don't think.
What was your favourite moment of the season?
Can you come back to me? I'm not really sure. It's hard to pick one thing. I mean, thinking back, it was great to see Jason at the start of the year finally put it all together. That was brilliant to see. Everybody's really happy for him. Fully deserved that. Rory Skinner, he was a great story, and also yes, here we go, another good British talent. I think we saw some good flashes from some other guys. Like Hickey, great moments at Cadwell. Brad Ray towards the end of the year had some moments. I think we're going to see a lot more of him next year, by the way. And for Taron and the Mackenzie family, I thought we learned a lot about Taron last year. We learned a lot about his determination, about his willingness to put his neck on the line. He's got so much ability, but he's also got an incredible amount of resilience, and also a fantastic attitude and a support bubble that I think that was what made the difference in the end between him and Jason. I think that's what defined him as the champion ultimately.
We couldn't have had a tale of two seasons more diverse, could we? Between two teammates as well. They weren't even in separate teams.
Yeah, how often does that happen?
It doesn't, does it? No. For Jason's unfortunate capitulation in the showdown to Taz becoming so strong after what happened at Silverstone. Yeah. I think not to the detriment of anybody else in the championship, but for those two in the same team, was a narrative all of its own, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Jason approaches this season, and what he's learned from that experience, because I saw a quote from him the other day saying, "I'm more determined than ever." But I don't think he could get more determined than he was last year. I don't think it was a lack of determination that cost Jason the title. So
you don't do a treble at the first round without determination, do you?
No. If anything, is he too determined? Was there too much riding on it for him the last 3 rounds? Yeah. He was riding injured as well. We don't know how much he was covering that up, so maybe that was a factor. But I certainly don't think he missed the title last year because of a lack of determination, put it that way.
I would agree. What are you looking forward to most for the 2022 season at BSB? I know we're only sort of 6 weeks away from pre-season testing, 70-ish days away from the start of the season. What's your plan between now and then? Preparation work, that side of things?
To be honest, preparation work, not a lot. I'm not going to lie and say that I'm sat here studying notes every day. I'm doing a master's at the minute, which is taking up a lot of my time and focus, and I've got 3 kids and a family that I really try to invest as much time in as possible before it starts, because as you know, as soon as we get into April, then life takes on a bit of a different dynamic. So not honestly speaking, not a massive amount of preparation, but obviously I'll be keeping an eye on what's going on. And what my expectations of the season are, and what I'm looking forward to about it are, I guess like everyone in a lot of aspects of life right now, is some kind of feeling of normality again. 2020 was amazing what MSV Stuart and his whole team put together to get us racing, and we're eternally grateful for that because they went above and beyond. Last year, the same, logistically, not just shooting the team, but for the TV side and everything, everybody went the extra mile to put a show on, but it was compact and it still wasn't like, we got fans in, which was great, but it still wasn't.
It wasn't a regular season, was it?
No. So I'm looking forward to a regular season again. Hopefully, touch wood, things, remain sort of stable. And then we get a proper season, and it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see some new rivalries. We're still waiting to find out exactly what the rider lineup is going to be. We've not really heard official announcements on some of the big names within the championship. So, but I think obviously Taz is going to be back there. Jason will be back there again. I think Brad is going to be there this year on a Yamaha. Hopefully Kyle can be there too and find some consistency.
And that's going to be a big shout for the two lads on Yamaha, especially with their history.
Yeah.
And as a Yamaha supported team as well. Certainly improve on the results of 2021, which were difficult on the previous manufacturer. But I think for me, 2022 could be possibly the most competitive BSB season in a long time.
Yeah.
Especially if PBM, that's the biggest question mark at the moment, as we know what their rider lineup will be. Will there be a rider lineup? We don't know. It's so quiet on the PBM front. So once that's confirmed, we'll know more. But it's, for me, with Tommy Bridewell, with the McCams guys, talk of Leon Haslam coming back, talk of Tom Sykes coming back. I don't know how much mileage there is in those two at the moment, because again, it's gone very quiet. But the guys that are lining up that are confirmed now still holds out for a really competitive 2022.
Yeah, I agree. And we wait with bated breath. It's unusual to get to this point of a year, into February already now, and we don't know what the grid's going to look like. But as you said, you only have to look at Jason and Taz. That's going to be a rivalry that's going to be resumed from round one. That's going on its own is going to be fascinating to watch again. And like I said, I think Brad Ray on a Yamaha is going to be a different prospect. He's fitter physically than he's ever been. He's been struggling with a wrist injury that a lot of people don't know about over the last couple of years. The BM, good package, but in the hands of every rider that's on it, has been inconsistent. We've seen guys like Hickey. 1 week is at the front, 1 week is, and it doesn't take a lot.
Not in that
P10.
class.
Same with Brad, same with Kyle. 1 week they're up, 1 week they're down. I'm not blaming I'm not saying that's just the bike.
No,
but it's a factor. I do think if Brad hits the ground running on the Yamaha from the start of the season, he's going to be there. And I think probably Taran knows that too. And they go back a long way, those two guys. And if we can get a rivalry between two young Brits like that. Brad, I think, is he 23, 24?
Yeah.
Taran, same. Taran might be a year older. That's mouthwatering, I think, for the championship, for the promoters, for the TV, for the fans. And that's just them two. Like, that might not materialise, but...
No, but it's
even if
the
it's
potential's there.
Yeah.
Potential is there. Mate, we're an hour and 34 minutes into this, which is absolutely fantastic. I finish off with two questions I always finish. I've got to alter one, because unfortunately you're not a rider. Although you have done some riding. You did the Valencia trip, didn't you? With
Let's
Steve
not go there. I'm not a rider, Dave. Yeah, I'm not a rider. You got it right first time.
I think that story of Steve Keys and Danny John Jules and the trip to Valencia is a whole different podcast, isn't it? For the story that you could tell for that one.
I can tell a story for that one. I'm like John Hopkins, there's many things I've done that I'm not proud of.
Go on then, give us, because when was that? Was that 2000 and... Was that 11?
11.
Is that 10 years ago now?
Yeah, 10 years ago, yeah. Well, 11 years ago. Well, yeah, just over
on the
10.
Pink R1s?
Yeah, Danny and Steve were on Pink R1s, and I was on like a Lorenzo fan club rep or whatever it was.
The Spartan.
The Spartan.
Yeah.
Yeah, black and white and red one.
I've not stalked your career, but I do remember these things.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was a great trip. If Steve and Danny are listening to this, I'm still, very thankful that they invited me along to it. We rode from... A lot of people, obviously, most people won't know this, but we rode from the Ace Cafe in London down to Valencia for the final round. And we did a bit of a fundraiser. We had this bike donated that was the R1 that I rode all the way down there, and then it got sold and the money was given to charity. But yeah, it was a bit of a mad trip. So there's the three of us in R1s, and we started some cool venues, and we're filming it to make a TV show out of it. And yeah, it was cool. But one of the funny stories that Danny, whenever I see him, still reminds me of was we were doing hundreds of miles a day. We were knackered like every night. We stopped off at this French motel and we buddied up into twin rooms, right? So me and this is Danny John Jules, man. This is the cat, right? And I grew up watching Red Dwarf, and my dad loved it and everything. First of all, I can't believe I'm on a trip with him, but the next I'm sharing a room with him, and this twin room with about 6 inches between the two beds, right? And we got onto the gin pretty heavily that night, and I woke up in the morning. Danny was not in the room, and I was bollock naked, lying on my back across both beds. Now,
listening, ladies and gentlemen, there's a story to be told.
We don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. We don't want to guess what happened. But what we do know is that was the scene. So, you know, I mean, yeah, I was pretty embarrassed. I got up, I was like, oh my God, poor Danny. Like, whatever happened here, poor Danny. And
still to this day.
Yeah, but we obviously laughed about it. But I was like, so what, you know, what, like, how did it? And he was like, don't matter, mate, don't matter, don't worry about it. And I'm like, I do kind of, for my own conscience though, I do kind of need to know what, you know, should I be really embarrassed here, or just take it on the chin and just go, you know, it's something we've all seen before, it's all right. Or did something happen that I should be really ashamed of? And he just kind of goes, yeah, don't worry about it. So I'm like, oh dear. Yeah.
That's one of the worst things he could have said.
Yeah, exactly. It leaves me wondering. So I still don't know to this day.
10 years later. We went to see Danny the other week, last week in Sheffield, in his new play, The Da Vinci Code. Very good for anybody who likes their theatre productions, and the show's coming somewhere near them. Very, very good show. Down at the Lyceum in Sheffield. Last question. What's your best hire car story?
Honestly, hang on. Nah, it's boring. Steve stuck one in a ditch once in Mugello, and we all had to kind of...
Some have them, some don't.
What, hire car stories?
Hire car stories, yeah. Most people do, because most people go, ha, and then they start leaning forward.
Yeah. I don't want to be a killjoy, but I always... those stories are like either mainly fabricated or... Maybe I'm just really boring, but I just think they're a bit...
Even Greg Haynes has a hire car story, Matt. He bumped the curb one time.
That's pretty out there for Greg. I've been in a few hire cars with Charlie Hiscott. Now, he might not be that forthcoming when it comes to talking, but getting behind the wheel of a car, and he's a different animal, believe me. So, yeah, there's a few wing mirrors and stuff in Imola, scattered around the streets of Imola.
So there you go. It's something.
Yeah.
You don't have to roll one. You don't have to. You don't have to go into the hills of Mugello and set fire to them as certain people have done before. So we don't have to go that far. But what I would like to say, Matt Roberts, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope ladies and gentlemen listening have enjoyed it as well. Such an insight into where you've been, how you've done it. And we wish you all the very best for the future and for the 2022 season coming.
Likewise. Thank you, Dave.
Once again, a big thank you to Matt Roberts for his time, and I hope you enjoyed the stories he told. I can't lie, those nuts were really spicy. And thanks also to the Dakota Hotel in Manchester for allowing us to sit in the corner and record the podcast. One thing we didn't get round to mentioning were the chat nights that are up and coming, as Matt hosts John McGuinness, James Whittam and Dean Harrison at venues across the country. Check out mjksportsevents.co.uk to find your nearest show. As always, give us a follow on the socials, search for Off Track on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and join in the fun. Next week, professional northerner Michael Howarth joins me for a general chat about BSB, World Superbike and MotoGP. So until then, bye-bye.